Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hammer of Truth podcast. I know it's been a while, and I appreciate everyone coming back. My name is Mike, I also go by Natafan, and I want to welcome our special guest today, Theory, who is going to be our economics expert. As we are deep into, we'll go right into a quick. We are as deep as we can be into the brand new political and landscape, which just 3 weeks ago changed massively when Joe Biden decided to drop out. So now we are deep into the Kamala Harris, Donald Trump race.
Face off.
Yes, the face off. The battle of whatever you want to call this. But,
Beauty and the Beast, whatever.
Exactly. This week, both Harris and Trump released their economic plans. I would argue that one released their economic plan and one talked about a lot of things, but we will talk about it as though they both released their economic plans, because I still think, even though Trump did not really go into any detail about pretty much anything, I think we can at least
historically he has. Yeah.
I think we can at least talk about some of the stuff that he had that he mentioned and what it could mean for our economy. So since he talked about it first officially, we'll look in on the Trump economic plan.
It's a horror show.
It is. One of the pieces of his plan that he talked about, that he's been talking about for a bit now, actually, is tariffs. He wants to increase tariffs. I know from my research that a lot of economists have said that his idea for tariffs would increase the cost of living in general for Americans by about $1,700 a year, pretty much giving us a new tax.
It's a regressive tax is what a lot of economists call tariffs. It's this idea that you raise the everyday cost of goods incrementally by putting these blanket taxes on what gets to come to the United States and what doesn't. And what a lot of economists find is that it disproportionately affects poor people and communities that are already disenfranchised by the system, in a surprise to literally no one.
No one. No.
Yeah. I think also one of the things that people don't really talk about is the relationships that get sort of frayed because of tariffs. So, there's two parts to this. There's the economic part, and then there's like the geopolitical part.
Yeah.
So it's going to affect Americans where it matters most. People are already feeling like the cost of living is so high that it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
We see it in, people love talking about gas prices, but more recently, which is kind of shocking, is grocery bills.
Mm-hmm.
Like that feels so much more real than gas prices for whatever reason, because we like literally all need to eat.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, at least if you're comparing gas prices to grocery bills, I mean, so many people work from home. There are a lot of things that you can technically do to
Public
limit
transportation.
Unless you're one of those people that has to own, a Ford F-350 and only gets 6 miles per gallon on your truck. There are ways that you can reduce your spending on gas.
It's bill.
Very difficult to reduce. You can do it to an extent, but hit a point.
Also, I think what's important, I mean, I don't want to stray too far from the tariffs, but they're all kind of connected. So the grocery one is especially, I think, a marker of like how dire the cost of living crisis has become for a lot of people. Because when you think about the economy, and this is obviously, I don't actively work in economics, so I'm not privy to any models that people are currently using. But historically, when you look at how sensitive a market is or how a market is feeling, you look at their spending across a variety of like markets.
Yeah.
Um, and grocery is always a second tier spend, like the cheaper option than
Hmm.
like going out, for example. So when you
Sure.
look at disposable income, people are like, oh, I'm going to go out to eat. Not only are we seeing it in a reduction of people going out to eat across the board, but now we're seeing it like in the cheaper option, quote unquote, which is, your grocery bill.
Yep. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we'll obviously be talking about it later, but Kamala Harris did at least make a mention of something to help with that problem. But we'll get into that in a second.
Exciting.
I also will point out that Trump mentioned grocery bill prices, but
Oh, did he?
that's about it. I think he's assuming that his presence in the White House will magically reduce the prices. I have yet
Yeah.
to hear a specific plan that will
Mhm. It'll
reduce
just
those
happen.
prices.
You know what? That's a tinfoil hat conversation.
That
I
is.
definitely have a tinfoil hat option on that, but sticking to tier, sticking to like the
Like I
real
said, it's
stuff.
not that he hasn't mentioned that it's a problem. He just hasn't actually mentioned what he's going to do
Yeah,
to work on the problem. But we'll
yeah,
go to
someone else's
something.
problem.
We'll go to something he did say. The next thing is something that both uh, Vice President Harris and Donald Trump talked about, which is tax on tips.
Mm.
I've heard from quite a few economists that this is not extremely popular. I will say the difference between the two is at least Kamala Harris has put restrictions on the amount that goes up to, who can get it, everything else. As it stands right now, other than saying no tax on tips, Donald Trump has given us nothing else, which in everyone's mind means there can be a lot of rich people that can use it to make a lot of extra money.
Isn't that always the way?
It sure feels that way. It
Isn't that
sure
always the
feels that
way?
way.
Yeah, if it's curious to me what people choose to focus on when they release their economic plans. And focusing certain initiatives on a historically disenfranchised population, people who rely on the generosity of others
Yeah.
to make livings of any kind,
Yeah.
right? We have subsidized, in essence, the restaurant economy since, you know, I don't want to say since like slavery was abolished because it was probably before then as well, but like we have subsidized restaurant work. And I'm sorry, we have subsidized restaurants in general
Yeah.
by subsidizing the wages of the laborers
Yep.
within the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
Um, and so making policies that are going to negatively affect those people without talking about the systemic problems like tipping as a theory in general
Sure.
is something I take issue with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So that's maybe
tipping
not a positive.
tipping has definitely is definitely an issue in America. We have definitely become a tip crazy society, which.
Yeah. I mean, and then there's like, but this is the thing when you make policies like this, right? You think about the different intersections of tipping. So you have like that meme that goes around, which is like, oh, thank you so much for giving me my coffee, barista. Why do I have to tip you like 30% just for a coffee that you gave me,
Yep.
Versus like going to a restaurant out to eat, which those workers are literally making underneath minimum wage and sometimes have to pay to serve you essentially if you undertip them.
Yeah.
So there's just a difference and it's tough because you can't, especially on a campaign trail, you cannot go into the granularity of your economic planning because you're going to offend someone.
Sure. The one thing I will add in Kamala Harris' side too, that she went along with the tax on tips, was she also wants to federally raise minimum wage, which, let's be fair, throughout the years the Democrats have been for and the Republicans have been against. So we're not. That's not
And
a.
the arguments there are they kind of make sense, like you don't want small business owners to be forced into a situation where they can no longer afford the labor that works for them. But at the same time, no one in this country should be working 3, 4 jobs just to, live in this
And
country.
let's
Yeah.
be fair. The people that benefit the most from a minimum wage increase are the ones that are going to spend everything they get to begin with, which arguably is putting more money into the economy.
Oh God,
There
don't
have
even.
been
Yeah.
there have obviously been many proofs out there that
Well,
raising the minimum wage in a state does not destroy the economy, because there
it
are plenty
doesn't.
of states that have a $15 minimum wage or more, and they are still there.
It does not destroy the economy, but it definitely puts a burden on smaller business owners, and I think that that's where that argument comes from.
Mm-hmm.
However, no, it absolutely increases economic activity because we know that the wealthier you become, the less activity you actually have in a market
Yeah.
because there are many reasons.
Yeah.
Some might argue that there's more socialism. So, like, the more that you make, the more you can reach out to your communities for assets, for resources, and therefore have to spend less, which is like you don't put money back into circulation
More,
and
more,
you're reducing the velocity at which money moves through the market, which
more,
is a measure of the health of an
more
economy. Yeah,
money in more money in people's pay also can technically mean more taxes paid, which could mean
absolutely.
more. So there's a lot of potential to it.
I mean, raising the minimum wage ultimately is best for people who are the working class, period.
Yeah.
If
Yep.
you are not part of the 1%, this is a benefit to you as well.
Now,
Not just because it helps curtail inflation,
sure.
but because it'll be more money in your pocket.
And we've if part of the reason that small businesses suffer from having to raise minimum wage is because the cost of renting out space and running a business is too high, that's a totally different issue that probably needs to be looked at as well. I mean,
Yeah.
we're
Rent.
definitely living in an environment where the people with the most money find it easiest to survive, because those little changes, while they seem to they complain that it affects them a lot, doesn't
Mhm.
affect them anywhere near to the extent that
I mean, I don't want to go off too much of on a tangent, but like people with money and resources have louder voices,
sure.
not just because we live in a celebrity culture where we like love celebrities and we love rich people. And so we look to them for advice. We look to them for how they're living their lives as a marker of how we should be living. But there's also the very real, they own X, they own media channels,
Yeah.
they own magazines
Yeah.
that can publish articles about how difficult any economic policy is for small business owners, but really it's about their corporations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another one that he talked about was no tax on Social Security, which
Okay.
ironically he complained. He if you've listened to Trump, he's been complaining that Kamala Harris stole the no tax on tips from him,
Mm,
because two
drop
sides
it.
can't have the same good idea. Um,
Mhm.
I will point out that Tim Walz in Minnesota did no tax on Social Security before Trump mentioned that. So
But Trump did know about
I
it, so he couldn't
wonder
have
I wonder
stolen
if
it.
he would want to. I wonder if Tim Walz could argue that Trump stole that from him. But regardless of
Uh,
who stole from who, what are your thoughts on the idea of no tax on Social Security?
I think that's fine, but I think that without, you know, yes, it's good to not have taxes on Social Security
On,
benefits.
on arguably the most um, economically
Challenging.
challenged
Yeah.
period in their life, because that's the
They
only
can't
way they're
work.
getting income.
Yeah.
So
I think that without talking about the effects that other Trump policies have had on programs like Social Security, you're not really thinking about the problem holistically. Like, yes, it's great that you're proposing not charging taxes on beneficiaries of Social Security,
Sure.
but you also decimated the budgets and the governmental revenue from wealthy individuals for those same social programs. So it would be doubly adverse, like it would be doubly bad if you took that money out and also taxed them. So it's one less bad that you're not looking to also tax them.
Yeah.
But the main problem remains, which is that you have reduced the amount of revenue that is coming into the government to support these social programs by
Right.
cutting taxes for the wealthy.
And again, I will point out with all of these, no specifics, like nothing. It just the no tax on Social Security is just words that
Is a
were
word.
behind him.
Yeah.
He never went into in depth.
That's how he does his best thinking, though. Is spitballing.
He wants to take his current tax plan that is about to end, keep it.
The one that everyone is currently complaining about.
Currently complain, unless you're a corporation, which you love it. He wants to reduce the
Not only are you
corporate.
price gouging,
He wants
you're
to
also benefiting
reduce
from
the
not paying
corporate
taxes.
tax rate more.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. Not as much. He only wants to go from 21% down to 20%. So it's not.
Wow. Okay. They're really going to hurt about it though. That 1%. I mean, that 1% can be a lot of money for them.
I'm sure 1% for Amazon is pretty huge. Although they're probably found some way to not
1%?
pay. They probably found some way to not pay any taxes to begin with. So let's be fair.
I mean, do you remember when Amazon was looking for a new warehouse and they had cities bid on how deep their tax cuts were going to be for Amazon's factory?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so from 21 to 20%.
That is what I have heard. Again, this is what I heard. This is what I have seen reported. I actually have not heard this come out of his mouth. So, obviously that would cost us more, and he's not saying how he's going to make up the difference anywhere.
Yeah. I feel like regular Americans don't get this about tax cuts for the wealthy. And I think partially it's because of that messaging that we were just talking about, where corporations and really wealthy people and CEOs and founders have money to sell a message that then trickles down. This is the trickle down part.
Yeah.
That message gets down to the working class, and the working class sort of adopts little nuggets of truth from that message and then uses that as defense for a certain plan without really understanding the implications on their life.
Yep.
Because no one is writing about their lives.
And because over the years it has been learned that all you have to do is say tax cut, and someone will love you and vote for you,
or hate you. Yeah.
Or
if you
hate
say
you.
Tax cut for the working class and tax increase for the corporations, all of a sudden you have a problem on your hands, right? But it's this idea, like, I just want to get the message. I know that the people who are listening to this or watching this are people, so whatever. But like, if anyone out there in your life is arguing that tax cuts for the corporations are a good move because it encourages business, I'll actually tell you to tell them no. And to say, everyone should pay their fair share for engaging in business in our economy.
Yeah.
Because that increases the money that comes in and out of an economy, meaning that the economy will just be less susceptible to crashes over time. It's also a health measure. But also, if a factory, for example, has taken up residence in your town, it is using your municipal water. It is using those roads to transport large 18-wheelers in and out.
Yeah.
It's using your bridges. It's using all of these things that are communal goods. And then they're not paying their fair share. So they are wearing down things that you need without paying for them.
Sure.
And you know who pays for them is you. You pay for them when you have to fix a bridge because the corporations won't.
Yep. 100%. 100%.
That was my soapbox.
No, that you are absolutely right. And one thing that he said that I would argue is technically not an economic policy per se, but somehow he keeps turning it into one. He wants to deport millions of immigrants.
I love we're so creative. That's an economic problem. I mean, it sure is, but not the way he
because
wants it to be.
two different things come of this from my understanding of the problem of this. One, he says that over 100% of new job creations are going to undocumented immigrants, which I find amazing, that he's somehow created a new kind of math where
A new kind of math that creates documents for undocumented people.
well, that out of 100, let's say 100, and basically he's saying out of 150,000 jobs that were created in the month of July, 200,000 were given to undocumented immigrants. That if you consider what he said, that is what he is saying. So the math isn't mathing. So that is an interesting side, but the more important side to think about when it comes to the deportation that I want everyone to hear, from my understanding, you can tell me if I'm wrong. If we mass deport millions of undocumented immigrants, we will in an instant drop our GDP, decrease our economy by at least, from what I've read, at least 2%. Mm-hmm. When you consider 2% of our economy dropping in a moment, we are instantly in a recession, if not a depression.
Mm-hmm. Well, depression is a measure over time. Yeah. So, but we will have a market crash.
But I think we would end up getting to a depression over time.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean,
trying to make up for millions of undocumented, the work that the undocumented immigrants do in this country would destroy our economy. Forget the fact that they would have to, all these places would have to find workers to make up these millions of jobs. But then after that, they would have to pay everybody more than they are paying these undocumented immigrants because they are undocumented immigrants. Yeah. And I
need people to realize that a 2% drop in our economy sounds like not that big if you're going up to 100%. I'll encourage you to think about the industries where predominantly undocumented immigrants work, right?
You think your grocery prices are expensive now?
Exactly. Good luck ever getting produce on time.
And have it not being quadruple the price.
The current state of farming in America means that you need to grab produce as quickly as humanly possible at a volume that is banana pants, and then you need to ship it across the country in an air-conditioned truck, also workers who are undocumented, all the way across the nation to get to the grocery store in time for you to pick a perfectly underripe banana that you let sour on your countertop, Yeah. I almost cursed there. So sorry.
It's okay. That's what beeps are for.
I know. Beep me. What's going to happen is that we are going to feel it immediately in our food. And I don't know about you, but trying to get anything done when you're hungry is not a good move.
Yeah.
Also, what you were saying earlier, Mike, which is like these undocumented workers, because they are undocumented, business owners have been able to pay them less than they would pay a full American citizen. Yes, that is terrible. I hope you feel that is bad news.
Well, no, they don't need to pay them as much, which again, obviously not good in its own right, but they don't pay them as much. They don't get health insurance. They don't get Social Security. Yeah. They don't get any benefit that American citizens get. And somehow they are like, they
don't get to vote either, which I think is a big thing that people talk about.
They do not get to vote. It is 150. I'm gonna do some Trump math here. It is 150% illegal for immigrants to vote in this country, especially in federal elections. If we're gonna be straight, there are a couple small local things where they can vote for
like a PTA board.
Yeah,
I don't know of any local elections that don't require ID at this point. And I live
it's in a very specific. It's in like I've heard of of like a couple specific towns in a couple specific states where they allow
Yeah,
everyone to vote for some very specific local positions, but federally, state-wise, it is straight illegal, and no undocumented immigrant would chance going to prison,
absolutely.
going through what they went through to get here, chance
Just
going
to
to
vote.
prison just to vote.
No.
Most of the most undocumented immigrants, because I have met a few in my time, are
I'm from Miami.
scared
I know
to
many.
death of doing something that will get them deported. Like there
Yep.
is nothing more frightening for
Yep.
someone who has come over here and is undocumented than getting deported. So the
I
idea
know
that
we're
they would do
talking
that.
about economic policy. I know we're talking about economic policy, but that's so huge. People who spent their life savings, put their lives at risk just to get here for an opportunity to be able to send remittances back to their family in places that are usually destabilized because of US intervention to begin with. And then you think that they're violent criminals.
Yeah.
An undocumented immigrant is so cautious of the fact that they could speed and get deported.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a reason that the amount of crime performed by immigrants is so much less than the rest than every other person in this
Population.
country.
Yeah.
Um, so
But
uh,
anyway, I mean, yeah, it's going to affect our food. It's going to affect our economy. It's going to affect
house
business owners.
pricing, house
It's
prices.
going to affect everything.
Yeah. So and it still boggles my mind how um and we don't need to jump into the into the
The
social
pit of despair.
into the social side of things, in the society side of things, but I did have a conversation just today with someone, and it just pushed into my head this idea that the people that are against immigrants in this country don't actually know what's going on. They don't actually know these people. They
No.
the person that I was talking to was using phrases like, we talk about this all the time, i.e. immigrants, and how they think that the government is paying them to start businesses in this country.
Sure.
And we see them walking around all the time. We see them. It's like, I would keep asking questions of like, they would make generalized statements. All of these immigrants would come in and they'd spend thousands of dollars on blah blah blah, and they're like, did you talk to all of them? Do you know that they are all
Did you talk to
undocumented
one of them?
immigrants? Did they answer me? No, they did not answer when I asked that question.
Of
When I said,
course.
do you know that all these people that you see walking around are undocumented immigrants, and not just immigrants at some point, and they decided to move to your state because for whatever reason? And again, no answer. It's just this assumption that everybody who looks a certain way must be an undocumented immigrant, even though
Listen, I took an anthropology. I took a lot of anthropology courses in my undergrad, but I took like an anthropology 101 class. And in it, we learned about how you start messaging to begin a war or to begin something, right? You start by dehumanizing
sure,
the group of people that you're talking about. And there are a variety of ways to do that. With stereotype, you do that to some degree, with generalizations, like you were talking about, but also the them
yeah,
and us
yeah,
is a huge one that's
sure,
happening.
sure,
How do you get people to believe that they are above someone else?
yeah.
Is by placing those people as less human than yourself.
And
And that's what they're doing.
what's hilarious is this American society's view on immigrants has always been horrible, which is ironic because America is, except for a small group of people in this country, is 100% immigrants. So the idea that, I mean, this, you know, you've got
But they're the right kind of immigrants, right?
you've
That,
got
that you're getting
yeah,
at
but
the thing.
what's the right? I mean,
White.
but it was dealing with the Irish back, you know, back in the
Yeah.
day.
And then when they didn't have the numbers, they included Irish people in the whiteness.
Right.
And then when they didn't have the numbers again, they included the Italians.
Right. Yeah.
And when they didn't have the numbers again, they made the Cubans of Miami believe that they were closer to whiteness than every other, you know, Latinx population down in Miami and in Florida.
And now we've got a vice.
That is what they do.
And now we've got a vice president, and because her great grandmother had things done to her by her slave owner, now supposedly
she's not black enough.
she's Irish. She's
Irish. Does she know that?
I mean, technically, yeah, she's probably got like that much Irish in her because her, you know, her great, you know, the person who owned her
parent or her people,
great grandparents, you know, did exactly what happened with slaves at that time.
Well, I think, like, listen, I know we're here talking about economics, but I think this is so interesting of a thread to follow because it is this idea that this group gets to tell people who is white and who is not. Because when they need help, they open up that whiteness barrier.
Yeah.
And when they don't, they close it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you, and it's all based on colorism, right? I am 100% Puerto Rican. My father is Afro-Caribbean, technically, in skin color.
Yeah.
We don't get to, like, I don't have a race to put in on a form because Hispanic isn't a race, but also like that's just our colonizer wild. But I have so much more privilege inherently because my skin is so much lighter than my cousin who has the exact same genetic situation. We're related.
Just got the darker skin.
But she got the darker skin.
Yeah.
And I've seen, and we're the same age, and I've seen the differences in access points, the differences in adversity faced. And it's all because of how close to whiteness I am, as my skin is light, and because I don't go out in the sun enough. Thank you, COVID. But yeah, it's and then at the end of the day, it's really about this group that gets to decide who is white and who isn't. And then they get to enact, you know, violence against those people that aren't.
Yeah.
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 Anyway, that was a tangent.
Back. It's okay. Tangents happen. So that is all. I will admit that is all I was able to really find of Trump's economic plan, because everything else is just pointing out everything that is bad in this world and acting as though,
I mean, he hates,
and acting
he's
as though
inflation
the second he walks into office, he will snap his fingers and it will be fixed. But not. And I do want to point out one of the things he said in his most recent word salad at Bedminster. He was asked specifically, ironic, had food behind him that had probably been sitting out in the sun for hours. Also ironic that he was talking about food prices being high and wasting food behind him
at a country club.
Anyways, so once he went through his whole speech, he was asked questions, and one of the reporters asked him, what message do you have for the people that are just suffering with massive credit card debt, at how you are going to help fix, how you're going to help fix that, how you are going to, what you are going to do, what's your message to them, or what you're going to do to help them, and what you need from, what they need to look forward to, all that stuff. You want to know his response?
Oh my God, I'm so terrified. I hope you see how aghast I am.
My message to them is to vote for Donald Trump. And it will be
Oh,
fixed.
he is gonna cut
And
up
it will
that
be
credit card
fixed.
for you.
It wasn't even just
He
vote for Donald Trump. It was vote for Donald Trump and it will be fixed.
I mean, another tinfoil hat
How
moment.
how
He
many
loves talking about how things will be fixed. Is Trump a fixer, like in the mafia?
but
Like,
this is what he's been saying from the beginning. This is one of the reasons it always drove me nuts in 2016 when he was running. There
yeah.
was a lot of reasons I didn't like Trump, and we won't go into all of those, and a lot of the people that are listening have already heard plenty of why I don't like Trump.
You're like, leave now.
But one of the things that always frustrated me is there was this idea that because he was a businessman, because he was a Republican, he could just walk in and
know what to
snap
do.
his fingers and fix it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been saying it about everything. He's like, if I was president here, all I'd have to do is walk in and say, no, this isn't happening, and it just wouldn't happen. And it's like nothing in his 4 years of presidency has shown that he actually has that capability, but people somehow still think that it's possible. I digress.
I think it's connected to like having a populace that feels so desperate. And
Sure.
that can be because of grocery prices.
Absolutely.
Sure. It can be because of, not increasing your wages. It can be because you feel afraid of undocumented migrants. It can be because you feel afraid that someone's going to take away your guns. Whatever.
And unfortunately, this does come down to the point of Trump loves people that don't understand how our economy, how our government, how everything works.
Every Republican.
Because if people understood how it works, they would sit there and go, yes, I had more money during Trump's administration, but it's also Trump's administration that caused the problems that we are now currently, recovering from.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that people have that anything Biden could have done from January, whenever inauguration is, to the day it started shooting up, like nothing a president could do as an executive order could cause the level of inflation that we saw in 2021. Nothing.
People think that inflation is this thing that happens when one lever is pulled. Inflation is like 100 levers pulled at the same time in a variety of ways that influence price across the board. We saw a supply chain problem in 2020, into 2021, into 2022. That increases inflation. We saw a resource reduction. People could not get things that they needed to make the goods that they needed because travel was down. There are so many things that happen. Supply and demand. People all of a sudden needed way more webcams than they've ever freaking needed in their whole lives.
It's why GPUs shot up. It's why it's webcams, earbuds,
people all of a sudden
everything.
Had a ton of they wanted to get from place A to place B. And instead of spending money, because they were only going out a few times a week, instead of spending money on a new car, they were looking at used cars. And all of a sudden you have a used car market that is bananas.
Yep.
Bananas. 100,000-mile Honda CRVs going for like $25,000. Are you kidding? That's not because of Biden. That is because inflation happens with all of these things coming
But it
together.
also doesn't help that people like the current owner of Twitter/X, who keeps saying that the only reason that inflation happens is because of the printing of money by the government, even though the government doesn't print
Elon
money.
Musk is and his class of people, because Americans get so uncomfy talking about class. His class of people, like the 1%, the 0.001%, don't work for you.
No.
They actually really don't like you at all. That
they
message
like your money.
that they were sending? Yeah, they don't even like that much. They don't even give a shit that much.
They don't need, people like Musk don't even need our money anymore.
They don't need your money. They don't. Tesla can lose money Tesla can design trucks that
It
cut
has been
people's
losing
fingers
money.
off, and they don't care. They don't need your money. Um, so when they talk, they're not talking for you. Their message is never, ever, ever going to be what you need to hear, because they are giving you the message that they want you to hear,
Yeah.
because it will benefit them in the end.
And we're going to jump into Harris's economic plan, but I do want to
Oh my God,
say
are
that
we?
that
Should we do a part two where we talk about Harris's plan?
no, I think I
We
think we
owe it.
might be able to. Well, if we have to
Yeah.
do a part two, we will. But I do want to point out that there's a lot of other weird things that, like the idea of EVs. There's all of these there are these things that Tesla can get from the government for making things that help the environment, and
Mhm.
they're not using them to get their own taxes down, which is the entire purpose of it. They're actually selling them to people that are causing a lot of
Mhm.
pollution in this country, to make it
What
so
captures don't work.
to
Yeah.
make it so they don't get fined for causing pollution in this. It's this whole messed up thing that we're not going to jump into right now, but that is why that's why there's a lot of messed up. We'll jump into Harris's plan real quick. I'm not sure how much we need to talk about a lot of them, but the big one, obviously, we just talked about a little bit. She wants to try and stop price gouging at grocery stores. Price
With our
gouging is always hard to
my
stop.
FTC bestie. I love her.
Yeah,
Lena. Is she the chair of the FTC?
I think so. But yeah, I
Hold
mean,
on.
it proving price gouging is always hard, but obviously the people will love it, and the businesses will hate it. So
I think it's really, I don't know a time in history. Maybe I do know of one other time, which is the Great Depression, but I don't know of a time in history where it's been so easy to see price gouging
yeah,
as it is right now.
yeah,
Because as we've developed all these systems that help us do our jobs day to day, like Excel spreadsheets and all these things,
sure,
it's become much easier for people doing the auditing work to understand the actual price of a good, the cost to produce one thing, and they can measure your profits
yeah,
based on your variable, cost of create whatever, all the things that accountants do.
yeah,
And what we're seeing across the board is this price inflexibility when it comes to lowering prices
sure,
for groceries, but a huge high price flexibility in the other direction when they want to raise prices,
yeah,
right? And we see it not just in the speed at which many of these corporations have been able to introduce shrinkflation, right? So they've been able to almost instantly change their manufacturing to produce less goods in their prepackaged goods, uh, while increasing the prices. And it's just like, if you're able to meet the market demand like that so quickly, there must be something else going on, right?
yep,
There's someone else paying for this, and it is the American people,
sure,
because it is expensive to change manufacturing that quickly.
yeah, yep,
I'm excited. I want lower grocery bills for sure.
yeah. Um, she wants to give for all first-time homeowner hope. Bleh. She wants to give for all first-time home buyers
Yeah,
$25,000 to go towards the down payment.
incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
I think that there are,
I mean, as
I put
someone who is a
my person
homeowner,
hat
this
on.
is my home.
Yeah,
The down
this is
payment
my home.
is the most difficult part for
And
anyone.
closing costs. Yeah.
For anyone to get to it is the probably the largest
Chunk of money
wall
people ever.
to for people to get into home buying. I mean, obviously right now the prices are insane, but even when the prices weren't, it was still the down payment that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's
You're
trying to get to
asking
that
regular.
20%. You want to get to that
Yeah.
20% because you don't want to be paying an extra whatever a month for homeowner
Insurance.
for
Yeah.
whatever it's called for insurance.
EMI.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I put my people on hat first, and I was like, that's great. That's amazing. And like the economist hat in me suggest that there might be market fluctuations that will be affected by that, right? Like if all of a sudden, so the housing market is so interesting because a part of me thinks that housing is a right, right? Like people should not
Hmm.
have to spend their entire lives paying back a mortgage. They should be able to afford a home comfortably. So that's a price issue, but it's also a what is it called? A supply issue.
Yeah.
I all of a sudden forgot supply.
Yeah.
It's a supply issue, right? Like in many of these places, homes are just not available, or the number of homes that are move-in ready are really small compared to those flips that are like $750,000 each.
A- And interestingly enough, to come right behind that whole there's supply issue problem, the other thing she wants to do is build 3 million new housing units that
There you go.
cannot be purchased by corporations.
Corporations. Yeah.
Um, so
I mean, that's nice. But then you have, like, then there's like an inequality of quality, right? Because who knows how good these housing units are going to be for those people. And you're going to help stabilize a market, but is it really going to help that many people, or is it going to help people in the way that we want to help them?
so
It's a
here
curious thing.
and I don't know what kind of houses or what kind of housing units they're looking at making. I will
Yeah.
argue that the biggest problem I have seen in this country is because of the cost of land, because of the cost of houses in the first place, nobody is making starter homes
No one.
anywhere. So
And when
if
they
she
do,
made
they get bought and flipped.
if she
Yeah.
made 3 million starter homes that could get people into the market that couldn't be bought by corporations, that would be huge for
I
people.
mean, I think that's great. That's a great starting place. I take issue because, 3 million where, right? Like 3 million spread across the entire United States means not a lot for people because that's a drop in the ocean for some size cities, you know?
Right.
And I get it. We have to start somewhere. So as a pilot program, this would be great.
I mean,
I think, yeah,
yeah.
$25,000 is great, especially for first time home owners. Like it was really tough for us to buy a house. Like it was absolutely the hardest thing I think I've done to date.
Yeah.
Although it's only been a year, so give it time. But, we are in an incredibly expensive market. All the starter homes where I live are actually LLC owned or corporation
Mm,
owned, like larger corporation owned. They buy all of the young houses, or not young, but like younger starter home style
yep.
houses. And then they flip them by adding entire stories or entire new wings. And then they charge triple the
Or they
price at
become
which they
rentals,
bought.
which still keeps people from getting in the market.
Don't even talk about rental collusion because that's banana pants too. So
Yeah.
so what are we going to do with people if we don't like make housing just more affordable overall? So I think it's great. I want to see how it works out.
Yeah. Well, and again, we before I go into the next one, we do want to make the caveat with all of this is she can only do what the what people vote her a Congress to allow her to do. If she doesn't own the House and if she doesn't at least have a majority in the Senate, I mean, unless she has
I
a supermajority, it will limit everything she can do. They'll be somewhat limited if she doesn't have a filibuster-proof majority. But if she doesn't just own both of them at all in this
Yeah.
current dynamic, we saw what happened
It's
for the
going to be
last 2
hard.
years. We're gonna have 2
I
more
don't
years
know.
of what we have now.
I think it's going to be hard. I I want the Dems messaging to be better overall. It's going to be hard if they position this bill when it comes to fruition, when, not if, about $25,000. It's going to be hard for those Republicans to say we're not signing on principle
Yeah.
if their population is directly affected
Yeah.
by.
This is why I think it will be really, I don't know why I'm holding this. This is why I think it'll be really interesting to see how the voting happens in 20. I've said this when it comes to the primaries that if we want to change the policy of a party, they see that by who you you vote through in the primaries. Like if you vote a bunch of ultra progressive leftists that are running as Democrats through the primaries, they will have no choice but to go, whoa, obviously obviously our base is starting to lean this direction. That is why MAGA has as much power as it does, because MAGA brought in a lot of people and they end up having a lot of power because of it. So the same goes for who we vote past in the election. If they already didn't get a blue wave in 2022, if there is a massive, if the Dems get a massive majority in the House and they hold on to a majority in the Senate, I don't think people understand the Senate seats that are up for election this year. The chances, it's going to be tough for the Dems to hold on to a majority. If the Dems hold on to a majority in the Senate, considering who is up, that will be the biggest alarm bells for the Republican Party that anyone will have ever seen in their entire life, because there is nobody before Kamala came in, especially, but there was no one that thought that the Democrats would hold on to the Senate this year. And now it's looking like, I mean, it's right now it's kind of slim, but there's at least a chance that there wasn't even before. And
which is a game. Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see how many people get out and vote. It's still, I will always say it, it comes to how many get out and vote. If we're at between 50 and 60%, it's going to be tight. But if we're in the 70s, whoo, that would be huge.
When was the last time we were at a 70%
Never
voting rate?
Okay. We've never been. The 62, 63, whatever it was for the 2020.
And like every politician banks on people not showing up.
For the 2020 was the largest we've ever had. So, all right, let's jump back
Probably
in.
Because of access.
Yeah. So she wants to bring back the child tax credit, and she wants to increase the child tax credit for parents with newborns. So for the first year, you actually get a bigger child. You get basically double what it was. It was $3,000, I think, and then they want it to go to $6,000. Both of those.
I hear the argument
Yeah.
of people being like, I don't want to support someone having children that they can't afford. But I also hear their other arguments, which is everyone needs to have a forced pregnancy. So like, which is it? Are you going to force people to have more children and not support them at all? Because I mean, it's not even that you're giving them affordable childcare or anything. You're just giving them a tax credit.
Yeah.
Or are you going to just let more babies be born that don't have affordable housing or affordable homes to,
and let's be fair, if you've ever had a kid, as someone who has had a kid, $6,000 that might cover your diapers for the first year.
Yeah.
We're
like
not
half a stroller.
We're not giving them a ton for that. We're just making it possible for them to not feel like it's the end of the world.
It's showing support.
Yeah.
It's also just showing people that the government can do things for them.
Yep.
And I think that is what's at the core of Republicans being so against this.
Yeah. And the last thing she said, which we talked about a little bit in the beginning, was no tax on tips. This one will be different because it will have the cap. There won't be a way for like hedge fund managers and all this other stuff to start pretending they're getting tips and stuff like that and getting non-taxed. Again, we'll see if any of this, we'll see if anything, we'll see what can actually go through. When it comes down to it, all we're hearing is what they want to do. If the stars align in Congress, because most of this stuff, all of this stuff cannot be done with executive orders. So we need to
It's
remember
about,
that.
yeah. And it's about like when you become president, you start building these people who do this work for you. You
Yeah.
start building people who write policy for you, people who think about economics for you.
I will also say I forgot to write this one down, but I just remembered it because I did listen to her rally today. She did also mention wanting to help help people forgiving more medical debt for people, because like in North Carolina, Roy
Wow.
Cooper used one of the plans that Biden got passed. Use the money from that to forgive a ton of medical debt from like from like if you have medical debt from back in like 2014, like people that have been living under medical debt since 2014, like they're getting it forgiven. So she wants to expand that to more places. So a lot of
That's
good things,
beautiful.
hopefully. We'll see. The unfortunate thing
know.
about the presidential races is they are required to promise things that oftentimes they know they may or may not be able to do for us, depending on how we vote.
Yeah. I will say it's a market difference to see a party trying to make people's lives financially better
Sure.
and a party who is trying to make people's fake ideology better.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and we obviously
Republicans
didn't
will benefit from all of these things Kamala is posing.
And we just obviously talked about the economic plan. We didn't talk about her, either of their, plans for society. Which is a whole different ball game. We definitely don't have time to get in the difference between Project 2025 and humanity.
Oh Lord.
But
so someone who's less tinfoil hat than me can do that episode with you.
Yeah.
I could be the bonus, the paid episode.
Well. All right. Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much, Theory, for coming and hanging out with me today. If you want to follow Theory, you're on TikTok, or you on anywhere else that you want people to? All right,
just on TikTok.
Her username is below. Thank you, everyone. If you like what you've listened to, if you like a podcast where two people who potentially don't agree on everything can have discussions and really get down dirty with the country and how we can move forward and in a way that helps everybody, not just certain people, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and all the other fun things, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Thank you again for joining us on this episode of Hammer of Truth.